Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's midnight now here in Cairo, and this is a new edition of Panorama News. In the upcoming 45 minutes, we'll be bringing you the latest of the political, economic and sports news from all around the world. I'm Henny Saif. I'll be your host for tonight, and we'll start off with the political news, and these are the headlines. President Sisi holds talks with Sudan's army chief Al-Burhan. Scores of Israeli settlers storm Al-Aqsa Mosque under heavy security. And Ukraine says it's advancing on the southern front near Robotyne. Welcome back. The news in details. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held talks with the visiting Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in Alamein City on Tuesday. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said that during the talks, President al-Sisi stressed on the significance of enhancing ties with Sudan on the official and public stages. The head of state described Cairo's stance towards Sudan as solid and reaffirmed Egypt's firm position in standing by Sudan and supporting its security, stability and territorial integrity. For his part, General Burhan said ties between the two sides are highly valued, praising the Egyptian enhancement to preserve the security and stability of Sudan. The meeting tackled the latest developments in Sudan and efforts to settle the crisis to keep the unity and sovereignty of the country. The talks also focus on the outcome of the Sudan neighbors meeting, with Al-Burhan welcoming it. Bilateral ties and coordination of aid for the Sudanese people, especially with regards to humanitarian assistance, also topped the agenda of the meeting. Burhan, in his first trip abroad since fighting began with paramilitaries in April, was accompanied by Intelligence Chief Ahmed Ibrahim Mufaddal and Interim Foreign Minister Ali Sadiq. Egypt has constantly exerted its utmost efforts to contain the Sudanese crisis and preserve stability and security in the brotherly country within the framework of the Egyptian foreign policy and its constants. Egypt has also affirmed its keenness on Sudan's unity, security, territorial integrity and stability of its people.
Since the outbreak of the Sudanese crisis in the 15th of April 2023, Egypt has exerted its utmost efforts to contain the crisis and stop the bloodshed of the Sudanese people within the framework of Egyptian foreign policy and its constants. These are represented in the stability and unity of Sudan, non-interference in its internal affairs, the safety of its brotherly people, and the provision of all possible assistance to it, as well as preserving Egyptian national security, starting with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's keenness and emphasis on diffusing the crisis and his contacts with all Sudanese, African, Arab and international parties, as well as the movements of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Immigration in coordination with other institutions to address the crisis and its consequences for the Egyptian community in Sudan. Egypt has also affirmed its keenness on Sudan's unity, security, territorial integrity and stability of its people and the importance of reaching a permanent and comprehensive settlement to the conflict as soon as possible. In this, President Sisi made several contacts with his counterparts in Africa. On May 21, 2023, Egypt welcomed the signing of the Sudanese parties participating in the Jeddah talks of a one-week arms agreement. On May 9, 2023, President Sisi received the Lieutenant General to Glock advisor to the President of the Republic of South Sudan for Security Affairs. The President received a message from his brother President Salva Kiir on ways to enhance the distinguished bilateral relations between the two countries, in addition to review developments in the situation of Sudan and consult on efforts to settle the crisis in order to preserve the safety and security of the brotherly Sudan people. On May 3, 2023, President al-Sisi received a high-ranking delegation from the U.S. House of Representatives, headed by Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy. The meeting witnessed discussions about developments on the regional scene and the crisis the region is going through, especially with regard to recent developments in Sudan, where the President stressed the importance of intensifying efforts to reach political solutions to the existing crisis in a manner that preserves the unity of the states and preserves the capabilities of their peoples and prevents sliding towards chaos and destruction, pointing to Egypt's exertion condition of maximum effort to advance the path of peaceful political dialogue in brotherly Sudan, a ceasefire and protection of civilians of the humanitarian consequences of the conflict. On the 30th of April 2023, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with Fumio Kishida, the Prime Minister of Japan, where it was agreed with regard to Sudan on the necessity of achieving and stabilizing the ceasefire, advancing political dialogue efforts, and completing the transitional phase, as the Japanese Prime Minister appreciated in this regard the assistance provided by Egypt for the evacuation of Japanese nationals from Sudan, extending its sincere condolences to the Egyptian government and people for the martyrdom of a member of the Egyptian diplomatic mission in Khartoum while performing his duty. And on the 27th of April 2023, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received Karl Nehammer, Federal Chancellor of the Republic of Austria. The meeting witnessed the discussion of regional and international files and issues of mutual interest, especially the situation in Sudan. And on the 26th of April 2023, President el-Sisi also received a phone call from Mr. Charles Michel, President of the European Council. The call dealt with developments in the situation of Sudan, where the President of the European Council expressed deep concern about the deteriorating political security and humanitarian situation and its impact on civilians and foreign communities, noting the importance of the role played by Egypt to advance efforts to reach a ceasefire and calm the situation in Sudan. And the President affirmed Egypt's full support for the brotherly Sudanese people in the serious crisis they are going through, and presented his sovereignty with developments in the efforts undertaken by Egypt to reduce the escalation and reaching a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire, and the contacts it is making in this regard with the actors at all levels, regionally and internationally. In this context, President el-Sisi stressed the importance of intensifying efforts to activate the political track and peaceful dialogue in a way that pushes towards the return of stability and security and takes into account the supreme interests of the brotherly Sudanese people. On the 23rd of April 2023, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received a phone call from the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak, in which the call dealt with discussing the developments of the Sudanese crisis and coordinating efforts between the two countries in this regard. As the British Prime Minister noted that the role of Egypt is essential in maintaining peaceful and security at the regional level, in addition to being one of the most important active neighboring countries in Sudan, in which the current crisis represents a serious challenge to stability in the entire region. And the two leaders expressed grave concern about the escalation of violence and fighting in Sudan, which exposes civilians to great dangers and increasing, while addressing in this regard the effects to evacuate the nationals of the two countries from Sudan. The two leaders expressed hope that dialogue and political track aiming at sparing Sudan the catastrophic consequences of the conflict on its stability and the capabilities of its people.
إرادة جيل, or a will of a generation party, said on Tuesday all its members and MPs had expressed full support to President el-Sisi in the upcoming presidential elections. It said its support stems from a desire to achieve the aspirations of the Egyptian people and continue with the development path. It said its stance reflects its aim for facing challenges to Egyptians and support for continuing peace and security through the solidarity of the people and the armed forces, the police, the judiciary and the media. The third ministerial meeting hosted by Cairo over the past 2 days on Ethiopia's dam has concluded. The Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation announced in a statement that the meeting, which brought together Cairo, Addis Ababa and Khartoum, did not witness tangible changes in Ethiopia's stance. According to the statement, Cairo will continue with its relentless efforts to reach a legal and obligatory deal over the filling and operation of the dam in a way that protects Egyptian interests and water security and preserves the interests of the three countries. The statement said to achieve those targets, all parties must adopt a comprehensive vision that protects national interests and achieves the welfare of all sides. Scores of Israeli terrorist settlers broke into Al-Aqsa Mosque compound under heavy occupation police security, conducting provocative rounds and rituals. This came as the Israeli occupation authorities detained 37 Palestinians in several areas of the West Bank, including Jerusalem. Palestinian security sources said the occupation forces arrested 12 Palestinians in Hebron and 9 from Nablus after breaking into their homes. They said 5 others, including 3 freed prisoners, were also detained during Israeli army incursions in Ramallah. The United Nations warned on Tuesday that the political crisis in Niger and the sanctions imposed against the military council risk triggering catastrophic humanitarian effects. The UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, said it had revised contingency planning for Niger since a crisis on July 26th, which resulted in the toppling of President Mohamed Bazoum. The UNHCR's representative in Niger said the ongoing crisis, with no clear solution in sight, was generating uncertainty and concern as the country continues to experience repeated attacks by armed groups, especially near Mali and Burkina Faso borders. With violence and attacks displacing more than 20,000 people in the past month alone, he cautioned that the situation had heightened protection risks for refugees, asylum seekers and their hosts. The UNHCR officials said there were no reports of major population movements from Niger to neighboring countries so far, but did not rule it out in the case of a military intervention or other shocks. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf said on Tuesday that Algeria is proposing an initiative to resolve the political crisis in neighboring Niger, with a 6-month transition period led by a civilian. Attaf, who recently toured West African states, said most of the countries they have talked to are against military intervention to end the crisis. Attaf added that Algerian officials have spoken 3 times since the coup to the Niger military leader, who wants a transitional period of up to 3 years. As part of its initiative, Algeria would seek a United Nations conference to restore constitutional order, propose guarantees for all sides in the crisis, and host a conference on development in the Sahel region. Russian air defenses downed Ukrainian drones over the Tula and Belgorod regions, Moscow's defense ministry said on Tuesday, without indicating if there had been damage or casualties. 2 drones were destroyed by air defenses over the Tula region south of Moscow.
Russian shelling killed a 45-year-old civilian man in the town of Kupiansk on Tuesday as Moscow's forces tried to advance in northeastern Ukraine. Russia seized Kupiansk in the northeastern region before, but Ukrainian forces recaptured the town last September and it's now under daily fire. Some residents remain in the town, but regional authorities have ordered a mandatory evacuation of civilians from near the Kupiansk front because of difficult situation. The Prosecutor General's office said a 67-year-old man had also been hurt during the shelling. Meanwhile, Ukraine said that its forces had pushed deeper into Russian defensive lines near the village of Roptin a day after claiming control over the village on the southern front. Kiev also ordered children to be evacuated from 5 settlements near the focus of their assault, as Russia claimed to have repelled Ukrainian forces. Military spokesman said Ukrainian forces were edging further in the Zaporizhzhia region, which Moscow claims is part of Russia. He added that the Ukrainian forces had successes in the direction of Novodonikiva to Verbov, naming 2 hamlets in the war-battered region, and troops were holding captured territory and attacking Russian artillery. The Russian installed head of the Donetsk region, where Bakhmut is located, on Tuesday played down the Ukrainian push after Kiev claimed successes. The Ukrainian ministry responsible for reintegrating occupied territories announced an evacuation order in 5 settlements in the region, citing the uptick in fighting. Some 54 children and nearly 70 people accompanying them will be removed from the villages of Gualapol, Stepanzersk, Benezoneia, Yurgosevka and Novobeliska. The ministry also said the remains of 84 killed Ukrainian soldiers have been recovered from Russia. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky paid tribute to fallen soldiers on Tuesday to commemorate Ukraine's Remembrance Day.
India said on Tuesday that it had lodged a strong protest with China over a new map that lays claim to India's territory, the latest irritant in testy ties between the Asian giants. The protest by New Delhi followed reports in the Indian media that Beijing had released an official standard map showing the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin Plateau as its